Here's a quote by T.S. Eliot that Forrest Fenn referred to very frequently. And I want you to take a look at this quote and how it will impact this solution, because essentially we will use the poem to find the starting location. Once we know the starting location, everything fits together. So T.S. Eliot said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the very first time." And it kind of makes sense because, as Forrest Fenn said many times, the most important thing you need to know is where to start. If you don't have the starting place, you have nothing. And then he was also asked, if all I know is begin it where warm waters halt and somewhere north of Santa Fe, is that enough information for me to locate the starting point? And Forrest Fenn's answer to that was no. That is hinting at the fact that the whole poem is required just to know where to start. According to Forrest Fenn, you could use the poem and the poem alone to locate the treasure, which is exactly what I'm going to do here. I want to indicate to you just one thing from the Thrill of the Chase. This is the line that appears just before the poem. So I wrote a poem containing 9 clues that, if followed precisely, will lead to the end of my rainbow and the treasure. And then he ended that line with a colon, not a period. Right beneath this is the first line of the poem, "As I have gone alone." So let's begin by reading the poem. You can look on the right-hand side and see the important details about the poem itself. "As I have gone alone in there with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where and hint of riches new and old. Begin it where warm waters salt and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. From there, it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down, your quest to cease. But tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold." Let's continue with the breakdown of the poem, and we're going to begin with the rhyme scheme. Okay, first we're going to take a look at the rhyme scheme in the poem. And in this specific poem, it looks like we have a rhyme scheme that is based on the last word of each stanza, and it alternates from line to line. So let's take a look at that. Now, the way you figure out a rhyme scheme is you start with the letter A in the alphabet, and you look at each word, and if the word has not been previously rhymed with another word, you give it a letter in the alphabet. If it does rhyme with the previous word, then you use the same letter as that other word that it rhymes with. So we have the word there. Does there rhyme with anything before it? No, of course not. We're on the first word. So we give it the letter A. Does bold rhyme with the previous word? No, it doesn't. So we give it B. Does where rhyme with the previous word? Yeah, it does. It rhymes with there. So we give it an A because it rhymes with there. Does old rhyme with the previous word? Yeah, it rhymes with bold. So we give it a B. Now we're done with that stanza. I'm going to go ahead and do the following stanzas based on the rules that I already outlined for you. Okay, now I'm going to interrupt here because now you got to remember, this is a global thing. It goes across the whole poem when you're looking at rhyme schemes. Up to this point, each stanza rhymed only with words in that stanza. But here we got the word seek, which rhymes with meek and creek. So we're going to have to use E here. We're not going to choose a new letter from the alphabet. And then no rhymes with go, so we'll give that an I. Weak rhymes with seek and meek and creek, so we give that an E. Now let me finish out the poem. Okay, so now as you can see here in the final stanza, we have the same situation again. We had to come up with a new letter J because of the word good and would. But we went back to B, which rhymes way back to the first stanza. So basically, what's happening here is he's got A B, C D, C D. They're all internal rhymes until we get to stanza 5. Once we get to stanza 5, he's rhyming back to stanza 3. And then when we get to stanza 6, he's rhyming back to the first stanza. That's actually called a circular rhyme because it's rhyming back. Okay, so now that we went over our rhyme scheme, let's just take an overall look at it. And I changed the colors of the words to indicate where we have a global rhyme going on. So let's look for one more thing called an internal rhyme. And that would be where one of these ending words also rhymes with another word within the poem itself that is not at the end. I'm going to show you what they are. First one we have is there. There rhymes with this word there and here. And then where rhymes with this where here. That's the only place you see those words. The word where only exists twice, here and here. The word there, when it's referring to a location, only exists twice. It exists here and it exists here. This is a contraction of their will, but this is not being used to refer to location in this usage. It's what they call an existential there or a dummy subject. So there it is color coded just to make it easier for us to refer to it in the future. So now we can clearly see that we have a circular rhyme referring back here, another circular rhyme referring back here, and then we got an internal rhyme here and here. So what that is doing basically is it's associating, it's basically telling us that these words here, there, and there refer to the same thing, just like where and where. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the poem itself and we're going to try to figure out what's going on in the poem. In the opening stanza, the first stanza number 1 up here, the speaker I is telling us that as, which means while, they have gone. And note that have gone means that it's a trip that they took and they never returned. And it kind of makes sense because Forrest Fenn had indicated that he wanted to take the treasure chest and go and die somewhere with the treasure chest with him, so he would not be returning. So the speaker says, I, is telling us that as they have gone alone into a place in there, we don't know where there is yet, but we know that he went in there and with his treasures bold. Now you could look at with his treasure bold, the word with meaning among or by means of. In other words, I hit the nail with my hammer. So I did it by means of my hammer. So he had gone alone in there, and with his treasures bold, gave him the ability to do two things. He can keep a secret where and hint of riches new and old. Right off the top of the bat, we notice, of course, that riches is synonymous with treasures. And also we have old and bold rhyming here. I just wanted to point that out. But we're wondering at this point, where is there and where is where? Now, where and there both rhyme. So we notice that too. So let's go to the second stanza. Here, the speaker appears to be telling us the steps that we need to take, which are the same steps that he did as they were going alone in there and with their treasures bold. He first tells us to begin it where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. So we do not know what it is that we are to begin. And by definition, it is used to refer to something previously mentioned. We know that it begins at a place where, and that it goes into a canyon down, and there is no mention of it leaving that canyon. It enters it, but it doesn't leave it. From the spot we begin, the place in the canyon is too far to walk to. So they appear to be indicating that we need another form of transportation to arrive at the place where we can walk into the canyon from that point. They indicate that we are to put in below that place that we began. So he's referring to that place up here as home of the brown. So we're supposed to put in below this place. Now we get to the third stanza. Here, the speaker appears to be describing both the area we came from, in other words, where we began it. And then after the semicolon, they're telling us the place that we need to go, which is going to be up a creek. But there will be no paddle, just heavy loads and water high in that direction. So deductive reasoning tells us that they're taking us from a high place where we begin down below to a lower place where we can then head back up along the creek into the canyon that the speaker never left. Since we have no paddle, we're likely to be heading to a place where we can park after we're done driving, and we'll be within walking distance of the target spot that he's sending us to, which has heavy loads and water high. Stanza 4, we are told that if we have been wise and found the blaze, to look quickly down, our quest to cease. So to cease is to end or halt. We do not know if we've been wise or if we found the blaze yet. So we should just continue reading the poem. Perhaps it'll tell us that information. They're indicating this because they say, but tarry scant with marvel gaze, which means to spend a short amount of time looking over something. In this case, it's the poem. The poem is all we have at this point. We can't take the chest and go in peace. We don't have it just yet, and we're not done figuring out what the poem needs. The only way we can make the poem cease is to read it all the way down to the last line, where it ends. The end, cease, and halt are all synonymous. Right? So stanza 5, this is actually a rhetorical question, meaning he's going to ask us a question simply that he gives himself the opportunity to interject an answer that he wants to give us. In other words, he's providing hints at this point. So we can see that he is asking, so why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The first place in this poem where he's describing going somewhere is stanza 1, as I have gone alone in there. And that happens to be the same time they mentioned treasures bold, which is what we are seeking. And the second place go is mentioned is what we are supposed to do, go in peace. We go in peace after we take the chest, which is a trove. So according to stanza 5, the speaker I has already told us the answers somewhere above, because he says the answers I already know. And they are, I've done it tired and now I'm weak. Those are the answers that are going to apply somewhere above. But also notice that we have the word it again. We have not seen it since stanzas 2 and 3. This would indicate that we are once again referring to the place where we are to begin and go in there. And then we have a reference that they were weak, which seems to indicate why they went to that place with heavy loads and water high to tarry scant. Why? Because tarry scant also means a short stay and a marvel gaze. It seems to be telling us it will be sort of like a room with a view. Okay? It's going to be someplace that we can stay for a short amount of time that is near a place such as a historical location that people would normally go to in order to marvel gaze. So the bottom line is that stanza 5 is giving us hints now to help solve the clues that are above in the poem, up here, where we're starting, which is what I told you about before. Now, if we go down to stanza 6, here the speaker's telling us, so hear me all, and we have all up here. So we know he's leaving his trove for all. What are we doing with it? We're going to seek it out. So we're sort of playing like a game of hide and seek. He's leading us to the treasure chest. So when he says, hear me all and listen good, he is telling you, I is telling you to read the poem and pay attention to what he is saying. In other words, read it out loud to yourself. Pay attention to what I is saying. Me is referring back to I. So the only place we have I in the poem is here, here, down here, here, and then at the bottom where it says, I will give you title of the gold. We also have it here and here, but it's contracted there. It's I have, I am. So it still counts, but it's not alone. The other thing that So Hear Me All and Listen Good is telling us, not just listen to I, but listen to the words and the rhyme scheme. Now, we already analyzed the poem, and we know that these two words are rhyming us all the way back to the first stanza. And these two words are rhyming us back up to here. And he's discussing it here. So it's bringing us back up to the first stanza. And he's also telling us to take note that there and where rhyme with there and where. That's basically what he means by hear me on, listen good. So if we do that and we take a look at the whole poem, we can see at the end here that he's going to give us title to the gold if we're brave and in the wood. So here we got in again, right? So brave and bold are synonymous. Now, if you go back to cold and gold, cold would be treasure bold, and then the title to the gold would be his hint of riches new and old, which in my opinion refers back to the word treasures, because treasures is emboldened. He's drawing attention to it, and it is synonymous with riches, new and old. So he's hinting, the hint is right here. Okay. And if you read the lines that I are in there, just read them alone like he instructed us to do. Let's do that now. As I have gone alone in there, I can keep my secret where. So right there, we know that where is there, in there. So if we do what he did and go in there with, now we don't have the physical treasures, but we could certainly take the title. Think of this as breadcrumbs. In other words, while he was walking in there, he dropped letters to lead us to the treasure chest. He didn't drop all of them because remember, he didn't return from this trip. So we're never able to complete it. We have to complete it by going there and getting the chest and going in peace. That's how we complete it. So as I have gone alone in there, I can keep my secret where. So why is it that I must go? The answer is I already know. I give you title to the gold. Now, of course, the answers I already know are I've done it, tired, now I'm weak. That refers back up to here. Now, when he says, hear me all, listen good, again, he's telling you to listen to rhymes. So why? Why? The H is silent. So he's telling us Wyoming. He's giving us a hint that Wyoming is where he went. The second thing we take notice of is he says, begin it. Well, what does it mean? Well, it is something we should already know, right? So that would imply that this is it. So what he wants us to do, over here, he's telling us what he did. And he wants us to follow in his steps to lead us to the treasure chest. Okay. So we're going to begin it where warm water salt. So it is actually the word treasures because we don't have the treasures. So we're going to take that trip. We're going to begin that trip with it. Okay. We're going to begin it with treasures. If we take it in there, it'll reveal his secret where. In other words, we're going to become brave and we're going to take it in there, in the wood. So now let's actually do what the poem is telling us to do. We're going to take the title, which is treasures, and we're going to bring it in there. And we know that the only other place there exists is in the line that has from there. And we're going to use this information to instruct us how to do what I'm about to show you. So I've already slid the lines. I want to explain to you why I made the choices that I did. So what he's saying is begin it where warm water's halt. Well, the T in halt is the same T that's in treasures. It is treasures. So we're going to begin there. We're going to take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. So we're going to put in below the home of Brown, right? The home of Brown, incidentally, is all of this up here because he's telling us that it's the home of Brown in the poem. Remember, we're not boots on the ground yet. So that's the home of Brown. So he's telling us to begin putting in the lines below there. We need an R. We have a T. We need the R. We got a lot of R's here. We got from there. We got two R's, one R, two R's, three R's. Which one are we going to take? Well, if we go back and read here, he's saying not far. In other words, not it's going to be near, but it's not going to be the very first one. We're going to take the second R. So we have the second R is in there. And it's confirmed because we're taking it in there. We have TR. So now we have treasures going in there. Then we need an E. Well, if we read the line here, it says, from there, it's no place for the meek. Well, one place that's no place for the meek is the end. So we're going to take the word end. And again, it's the second E in the line. And we're going to push that one over until it's in the column below the T. So we have T, R, E. Now we need an A, but he's telling us there is no paddle up our creek. In other words, don't use this A because there is no paddle. So what that means is we need to take all of the letters out of this line. So we had to shift that line left. The end, remember, is ever drawing nigh. So drawing nigh means left. We're going to draw this line left so that nothing is in the treasures column. The only thing we're going to have in that column, and now we get our A, is just heavy loads and water high. So which A are we taking? Well, we're not going to take the one in heavy. We're going to take the second one. So now we have TREA. Now, if we look at the next line, and you'll notice that I shoved these two lines over. To be honest with you, it doesn't really matter whether you do that. But it repeated the same pattern. We only have one S. So we're going to take the word wise, and we're going to take the second U. So we're going to take the U and your. That happens to expose the word Y here, which is going to be the state of Wyoming, okay? He's told us that down here. And that's the line that's referring back up to this stanza. And like I said, this stanza down here is confirming what we had above. And notice we spelled out why. So why is it that I must go? If you have been wise and found the blaze, well, we're wise because when we studied the poem, we learned the rhyme scheme, we learned about the title, and we learned that we're supposed to take the title, which is treasures, bold. So we're going to take the word treasures and we're going to put it in there. We're going to follow in his footsteps. And we're going to begin it where warm water salt and take the word treasure down that column. We get here, and he says, if you have been wise and found the blaze. Well, if we look at the poem, we do have a blaze. We have the word the as a cross, the, and end, which also means our quest has ceased. We hit the end, the end. So we did find a blaze. So we have been wise because we slid the right lines over and we found the blaze. So if we look quickly down from the blaze, which is in the poem below the Homer Brown, we can see that if we count the vertical words that overlap, only the word the, and then of course the word end, but we're going to stop at end because that's where we cease. So we have try, the, wheel, END, 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 kind of like PB&J, peanut butter and jelly. You can read it that way, END. So try the wheel, END. Now, if you did these two lines like I did here that are optional, like I said, it doesn't really matter. There's nothing else in that message. You can uncover the state of Wyoming here, and it'll match down here, just to prove that you're on the right track. And the other thing I want you to take notice of is the only letters that we don't have will be S-U-R-E. So if you look at the letters we didn't move a T, it was already in place. So we moved an R, an E, an A, and then we have and the parts that we didn't is called sure. Reassure are the letters we took from treasures. Reassure. So that's how he's giving us confidence that we now know the right place. So we're going to try the wheel, END. And the wheel that we're going to try is a historical wheel. It's a medicine wheel, tired and weak. It's in the state of Wyoming. It's the wheel. it represents 81 Plains Indian tribes. All of the Plains Indian tribes are represented at that wheel. That is their spiritual home. So we need to go there and try the wheel. So we revealed his secret where. So that means that we can replace this where with the medicine wheel, because that's where we're going to go. And that's what I'm going to talk to you next about, how we're going to apply what we've just done in the poem at the wheel. We're going to arrive at the wheel, which is where we begin, and we're going to know the place for the very first time. We just did all this work just to solve where warm water salt, because you can't look at just warm water salt and align it with any map. Forrest Fenn told you that. Where warm water salt and somewhere north of Santa Fe is not enough to figure out the starting location. You have to use the poem, which is exactly what we did. There's no ciphers going on here. I didn't change any words. All I did was move these lines over. And if you want to learn more about hints, you can look in The Thrill of the Chase, page 23, the first page of the chapter called Jump Starting the Learning Curve, when he talks about the sliding trick. And it's all done through the rhyming scheme, referring back, helping us define the fact that we need to take treasures and bring it in there. So he essentially left breadcrumbs. Now, you'll notice that the word is not completely spelled out, and that's correct. That's like I told you before. He never left. We need to take the treasure chest and grab it to complete it. He never left. He took the treasure chest. He went to that position in the middle of the canyon, and he left it there where he was supposedly wanted to die. So it's not done. So you're not going to finish it in the poem. That's our job. We now need to go there. And that's where, now that we have the poem figured out, all of the clues are going to be really simple to solve once we go to the wheel. And I'll show you that now. Okay, so here's a satellite overview of the area, just so you could get an idea of what the terrain looks like. This is a road coming from Lovell. This is US 14 alternate, or US 14A. This is the current way that you go to get to the wheel. This is called Medicine Wheel Passage. You go up to here, and then consider this like a driveway. You make a left onto here, and then you follow it, and you have to park your car in the parking lot below Medicine Mountain Peak, and then you have to walk to the wheel. You're not allowed to drive up there. The protected area for the wheel that they set up, since they've been going to court since 1989, and it was finalized in the 2000s, is basically, it's like a weird circle shape, but basically, let's just say it's everything within this purple line, which is the border of the national forest. This area here is public property managed by the BLM. It's not owned by anything other than American citizens. It's not even in the Bighorn National Forest. The Bighorn National Forest in the protected area basically ends where the waterfall is over here. When you arrive at the parking lot, you'll see there's a ranger station here. All over here and over here, there are kiosks that contain a lot of information that describe everything that I'm about to use in this video. There is no reason to do any research on this outside of going there. However, if you do want to go online, you can do that too, because it's all recorded. Everything I'm about to show you is all online, since this is a historical location. The first thing I want you to take notice is that you'll see this map on site. And this is basically describing the wheel. And just to put it simply, when you go here on a vision quest, when a brave or an Indian, a warrior would come here on a vision quest, he would sit inside this cairn, which is the F cairn. They call it the back seat. It's the only cairn other than the center, which is labeled O, that is inside the wheel. The other cairns, there's 5 of them, A, B, C, D, E, all refer to objects that you're going to view from the wheel. Now, A, B, and Sirius, and then D are the ones that you'll view when you're sitting on the vision quest. In order to view the sunrise and sunset, the person would have to leave here, come outside the wheel. They stand at E and they look across the center. They'll see the summer solstice sunrise. If they stand at C and look across the center, they'll see the solstice sunset. Here's another map from on site. It's basically the same thing. Here's the kiosk you would see as you entered the wheel. You'll first see the kiosk, and then you'll have this stone carving of the wheel. So there's like kind of a third map. When you walk in, you'll see a sign here that says walk left. You're supposed to walk left or clockwise. The Indians don't want you to walk this to the right because it would upset the spirits. You're supposed to follow the sun, just like the wheel does. So you're walking clockwise. And these, of course, are all the spokes around the wheel. Before you arrive at the wheel, when you come up from the parking lot, you're going to have an overlook. This is the Five Springs overlook. This is the bench that has three names on it of the three founding fathers or the main Indians in charge of all 81 Plains Indian tribes when they took on the coalition for the wheel to fight the United States government and the lumberjacks from taking this sacred place away from them. They fought and they began in 1989 and they won sometime in the late 90s. And then they went back twice again over the 2000s to increase the size of the protected area. So that bench with Charles Brady, Francis Brown, and Hammond Wise, Wise. And remember, everything I'm telling you is on site. There's a kiosk here, and there's a kiosk right here. So this is an overlook that shows you down to the ancient trail that they used to take coming up to the wheel. We no longer go that way. We go the way I just showed you on the road. But the ancients and the Indians would come up on that trail. And I'm about to discuss that a little bit more. But I wanted to show this space. Now let's go through the kiosks that you'll see on site. I'm just going to show them briefly. You could pause it if you want to read what's on there. But remember, all this stuff is online. You don't need to read any other books. You don't need to read Thrill of the Chase. You don't need to do anything. Everything is described here. And it's also, of course, mirrored online. This is the one that's on that bench. So I want to point this one out because that becomes important. And you've seen this one already. This is right at the wheel. And then the walk left sign is over here. This is down at the base of the ancient trail. And it describes the road in its current state. In the mid 1960s, they decommissioned this road. And the only reason to use this road now is to go to the Five Springs Falls campground. When you arrive at the kiosk near the ranger station, this is another board with all kinds of information and maps that you would see. And also it discusses the court case and how they won. So again, like I said, no knowledge is needed here other than what you can get online. And that's that. So here's a shot from Google Earth of the wheel. And I'm going to go over how we solved the poem at the wheel. So the first thing, like I said, here's the wheel, and here's our currents, A, B, C, D, E. Now, due to the time, I'm not going to explain what each one of those means. You can refer to the maps that I just showed you before. But just to be brief, this is where you would, when you're sitting and looking this way, you're going to see Aldebaran, which is the brightest star in Taurus the Bull. And that's going to rise on a specific time. I think it's 2 days before the solstice. And then this one is Rigel, which is the toe or the foot of Orion the Hunter. This one rises 28 days after summer solstice. Right alongside of this, if you look this way, you'll see Sirius, which is the dog star. The dog star rises 28 days after Rigel rises. The D cairn is the only cairn at the wheel that's associated with water, and it's called Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut is known as the southern fish. And the mythology behind Fomalhaut is that it sits right below Aquarius. Aquarius is above it, and he's dropping water into the mouth of the fish. And there's actually a constellation of the stream of water too. And the stream of water ends at Fomalhaut. Okay. So the water halts at the mouth of the fish. And you'll also notice while I'm pointing it out, listen to Fomalhaut and halt. Fomalhaut, where warm waters halt. Fomalhaut. Okay. And another hint while I'm here, and I don't really want to get into the hints, but a brief one. There's no paddle up your creek. This is the dog star. You're not going to be going up the creek. You're only going to be going to heavy loads and water high. If we go sit here and view across D, this cairn, the line coming off of that cairn, is going to show us the place where warm waters halt, the physical place. And that is Five Springs Basin, just below it. And I'll show you that in a minute. When you're reading the poem and he's taking you around his circle with the hints, okay, heavy loads and water high, and then the end is ever drawing nigh. Well, when you're standing here on solstice sunrise, if you were looking this way, the sun would come up over on this side. And just like Forrest Fenn did, we're going to put our back to the sun and follow this exact line down into the mouth of the canyon. And that's going to lead us to the place that we're supposed to put in. Now, one of the other things I want to show you is Forrest Fenn said that this is a map, right? The poem is a map. And we know there's maps here. There's 1, 2, 3 maps on site. So let's take a look at something interesting. I scanned the poem, I slid the lines, and you've seen this before. I just got done explaining it in this video. So I shifted the lines, I spelled out treasure, and then I cut the background out of the text, and I'm overlaying it on top of a graphic of the wheel. And I want you to notice that our blaze in the poem, the E in the vertical E, which is where we have try the wheel, is ending right on the E cairn. So this line is actually pointing, there will be no paddle up your creek. It's pointing down to where we have to put in. The Homa Brown is this whole area that I showed you and I just explained. It's this area near the wheel in the national forest that they protected. So the first canyon that this line and the first creek that this line crosses over is Five Springs Creek at Five Springs Canyon. Five Springs Creek is plural, 5. It was formed at 5 warm springs in the basin below where this red line is pointing. So we got the right on top of the E that we're supposed to follow, and the E in end. Interesting, right? So now let's look at end. We have the end, and here's end. Notice that we moved this line to the left, so there's a gap between here. Well, if I do the same thing again, we have E, N, D. The D in loads is right on top of the D where warm waters halt. I don't think that that's a coincidence, right? And it also crosses over blaze and cease. So there is an instance of the poem. And I'm not going to do this in this video, but I did do it in other videos that are on my channel, and you could do it yourself too. If you cut this out as a paintbrush, and then you overlay it on top of the poem, you'll notice that the same thing happens. This E cairn overlays the E and creek. The E cairn will go right over the E and creek, and the D cairn will go right over the D and loads, and the center will be right on end. Now remember, we were supposed to take treasures, which we did, and go in there. We took it in there. Now we're actually physically trying the wheel, and the wheel is there. So we're doing exactly what the poem told us. We don't need to figure it out anymore. At this point, it's really easy. The E and D is ever drawing nigh. Well, here's the E and D. He's telling you that those are going to point to where you're supposed to be going, right? And again, remember the end, cease, halt, all of those equal an omega. So here we have like kind of a double omega. We got the end, the end. So that's two omegas. So we solved the poem. So we hit the end, we ceased, but we don't have the treasure. That's an omega. We reached the end. Okay. There's multiple stories going on here. So here we are now on a topographical map, and I'm just going to show you from an overview again. Here's coming off the D cairn. The line is purple. And here's the orange line coming. This is the sun light coming down, the exact line right over the E cairn of the solstice sunrise. Notice that right here, we have 5 things all named the same. They all have the root name Five Springs. We have Five Springs Basin, which is right at the end where Five Springs Creek forms. So we got the basin and then the creek. This is where warm water salts. Then the sun goes into Five Springs Canyon over here. This is Five Springs Canyon all the way down to here. When it enters the canyon, it goes over Five Springs Falls. That's another marble view. Then it goes over campsite number 9, which is where the sun is intersecting where the treasure chest is. And I'll get to that in a minute. Then it intersects the turnoff that you're supposed to make onto Campground Road. Now, this road, like I said, is US 14 alternate. This white road, and then here it turns red, is the old US 14A. Up until 1965, that is the only way you had to get to the wheel. That is the way Forrest went to the wheel. That is the way the ancients went to the wheel for thousands of years. That is what's described up here at the wheel, actually at the bench over here, where it describes the crossroads of culture. This is the crossroads of culture. Notice that the sun also ends or goes into Rainbow Canyon. There's an overlook over there to look into the canyon. So the sun is our blaze at this point. The blaze in the poem was essentially an omega or the end, right? That's how we got where we are. Let me take this into a paint program and show you something. We talk about not far, but too far to walk. This white road is all sort of like it's just the entrance. It's like pulling into Disney World or whatever, and then you park. So essentially, we could say that walking distance would be from where you turn into the wheel, where the historical site is, to here. So if I were to draw a big circle, okay, so there I created a circle, and the circle radius goes from the wheel center down to here, and then it curves around. Incidentally, that's roughly 2.5 miles as the crow flies. You'll notice that it happens to cross over where I have this X here. And I'm going to get to that in a minute when I show you a zoomed in location to explain the ending of the solve. But I just wanted to point that out, that is one way that we can look at it, not far, but too far to walk. So he's telling you can't walk there from here. So what we're going to do is the next logical thing. We're going to drive to the nearest location that we could park over here and then walk into the canyon. My drawing skills are not the best. I don't have a tablet here. I'm using my mouse. So we're going to continue up that road. So there we are. Now we're right here. We're parked in a parking lot at the Five Springs campground. Well, right here, there's a trail that takes you to the Five Springs waterfalls. Not only does it take you to the Five Springs waterfalls, there are 9 campsites here. 7 of them are all over here. They're all down here, right? 2 of them are over here. Campsite number 8 and campsite number 9 is roughly over here. I'm not zoomed in enough to tell, but so basically the sun comes down and it intersects the creek and the exit from the trail Now the trail goes like this up to the waterfall, and then it stops. You can't go any farther. That's about a quarter of a mile, and it's only a 100-foot elevation change from beginning to end. But Forrest didn't even need to go that far. He's only going to have an increase of maybe 20 feet because all he needed to do was park the car, walk roughly 1,000 feet, go off the path that leads to the waterfall at campsite number 9, where the sun intersects, and go down into the campsite. And then I'll show you what happens from that point on. But now we're there. We took the ride. We came, we parked, we got out, we followed the trail, we exited the trail. We followed the blaze to get down here, and we followed the poem. We're here. Let's show you some sights on boots on the ground at the camp now. Before I do that, I want to get one picture of the bench that's up at the Crossroads of Culture. Charles Brady, Francis Brown, Hammond Wise. They're also mentioned on site because, like I said, they were the leaders of the coalition that saved the wheel. Those are the 3 Indians. When you reach the point at which you need to exit the trail that goes to the falls, you're going to see a sign that's Five Springs Falls Trail. In other words, it's taking us to water high. Not maintained beyond this point. Travel at your own risk. So it's no place for the meek. Here's our heavy loads, falling rocks. You'll see more about falling rocks in the future. There are rock slides here all over the place because the Bighorn Mountains are almost turned 90 degrees on their side. That's why you can see the layers of the ground go from left to right instead of horizontally. They're going up and down. You can see the layers where all these cracks are. When you turn off the trail at that location, this is what it looks like going into campsite number 9. And this is the last place that's actually maintained. You can see it's kind of like crushed gravel. But take note, there's a picnic table back here, and also notice this rock. Over here, there's a fire pit by the picnic table. On the right-hand side is where you would pitch a tent. This is campsite number 9. This is the closest campsite to the Marble Gaze. So this is where you would tarry scant, and you have a Marble Gaze within walking distance. You can't get any closer than this when you're staying at the campsite without going on the trail and physically walking to the falls. Now here we are, walked up to that rock. That rock is right here. And you can see the picnic table, and you can see the fire pit. If you look directly across from the fire pit, what do you see here? Not one tree, but 2 trees that grew in the shape of an upside down omega. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. Remember how Forrest Fenn said that I suggest you bring a flashlight and a sandwich? Maybe that's why when you get before you get the treasure after, you can come and have a sandwich. But I'll show you what happens now. Because when you're sitting here, you're still about 50 feet away from where the treasure is. It's not within 50 feet or more, actually, of any human trail. There's no other trails back here. This edge back here is the mountain, it's cliffs. And just to our left is a rock slide. There is no way to get back here other than going down and cutting your way through. Remember, this picture was taken not in the summer, but in the fall. So a lot of the foliage that you would normally see here during the search season is gone. And I also want you to note that directly above this, in the canopy of trees, there's a hole in the canopy, and the sun is able to come down here. You can kind of see that hole that I'm talking about in this picture. Friends of mine named Justin and Michelle, who live in Wyoming, went on site for me about a month ago, and they shot a bunch of drone footage. This is a still image from that drone, and I overlaid it on Google Earth to give you a rough idea where campsite number 9 is and where we're looking at down here. The distance from here, where the picnic table is, to here is probably about 60 feet, all right? Underneath these trees are the 2 omega trees that I just showed you. This whole area is clear. Google Earth doesn't go down far enough to show you, but what we have right on top of where the treasure chest is a third tree. This one grew up out of the ground about a few feet high, and it made a 90-degree turn, and then it formed an omega laying on its side naturally. And that tree, one of the arms of the omega, is cut off recently, probably a couple of years ago. I don't know. But you cannot really see that tree from Google Earth. You can from a drone, but you can see it. It comes over here and it curves around and it's busted. You can see the broken piece over here. In there is where the treasure chest is. So you would have to leave the camp, walk down an embankment about 40 feet, come across the creek, which is very shallow, maybe 1 or 2 inches deep, if that. And right on the other side of the creek, about 2 feet over in rocks and mud, beneath that tree omega, which is about, I don't know, I'd say 30 inches in diameter. So that tree's got to be at least close to 75, 80 years old, at least, minimum. And it was naturally formed in that shape. Now, normally it's all overgrown with dogwood, and I'll show you that now. I didn't show you this earlier, but when you park your car, this is what you would see. There's another kiosk over here that explains the waterfalls and explains that Indians, before this was a campsite, the Indians would come here and they would have sweat lodges. They would prepare for whatever ceremony they were going to have at the wheel. If you go this way, it'll take you to the falls. If you go this way, it'll take you to campsite 8 and then campsite 9, and then it hooks back up to this trail and takes you to the falls. So you can go either way to get to the campsite. But where these two meet is where the sign is that tells you that the path is no longer maintained beyond this point, and yada yada, right? So I wanted to show you that picture. This is a JPEG kind of looking down on the nook, okay? And you can see the tree that comes in, covers the nook up, and then it's busted, right? This is from looking the top down, and I want you to notice all the dogwood. Now I'm going to show you a video that Michelle and Justin took when they were boots on the ground. Again, this was roughly a month ago, maybe a little bit over a month that they took this, the same day as the drone footage. But here's viewing that double omega tree from another angle. There's the picnic table. There's a big rock, and the creek is down here. The creek is flowing towards this direction. And you can see something that looks like an eye on the opposite side of the creek. That is what you see when you stand up at the campsite and look through the two omegas down here. And that's the omega tree. Here's one of the legs. Look how big that thing is. And the other one is busted off. You can see it laying on the ground on the other side. But the tree comes up and makes a 90-degree turn and covers that nook. So that's not a dam. There's no water coming from that direction. That's actually a natural feature. And you can see the aspen tree here. And again, this is all dogwood. All around here, you can't tell now because Justin went in there and cut all the dogwood back. But if you were a child, you could probably go in and go underneath the dogwood and go right into that nook. It's maybe big enough to fit one person. And it's beneath the wood, beneath the omega. And there's rocks in here, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now, as far as somebody stumbling on it, like I said, there's no reason to go here. Number one. Number two, during the camping season stuff, this is all overgrown with wood. Number three, it was hidden underneath rocks. Number four, there's no trails here. Number five, let's say you had to go take a crap. There's bathrooms on site. Why would you go in the woods? I don't know. But even if you did, or you wanted to go out here and pee, why would you cut your way through all the dogwood, ford a creek and go on the other side and then remove all that, and then take a pee, and then remove the rocks and see the treasure. I mean, it's just not going to happen. The only person that would think to go there is a searcher. Now, I can't prove it, but I believe on the rocks there was the word end or another omega carved on the rock. We can't tell because the finder went in there and disrupted it after he took the chest. Here's another look at the nook after he cut back the trees. And you can see Justin, that's about as far in as you can go under the tree. Back here, there's like literally the canyon walls and rock slides coming down. And he had to cut and hack his way in. Here's the creek. Right where his feet are is like pretty muddy, actually. But when these branches are growing, as you can see, it was all like this, all the way over here. There's one opening over here that maybe a kid could fit through, or somebody that squat down real low would be able to see inside of there. There's another shot of that place as he first got there and he was starting to clean it over. Again, you can see the tree laying down and it's busted over here, and it was in the form of an omega, and it grew right over the nook. There's nothing back here but rock slides, and then the mountain goes up a steep cliff over there. There's no trails. There's nothing on this side. And all of this rosier dogwood is all over the place, along with juniper trees. And of course, the majority of the wood here is going to be pine. So that's pretty much it, folks. That's pretty much the entire saw from beginning to end. I showed you how we studied the poem, how we used the poem and only the poem without modifying it in order to find out where warm water salt. And then we took the poem after we solved it. We went on site to the wheel and we did exactly what the poem secret message, the secret where that he puts in there in the poem. We at the blaze in the poem. We went there and we used the wheel, just like he said. We tried the wheel. We used the wheel and the maps and the information on site are also available online. This place has been there for 12,000 years. It's not going to go anywhere. It's documented forever in history. He could rely on that. It's also kind of out of the way. It's not well traveled. Not that many people go to this campsite. So I'm sure when Forrest was there hiding the chest, he could have spent an hour there having a sandwich. Nobody would know any different because he would have the chest in his bag. And as soon as whoever happened to be, because not that many people are going to camp, you got to remember, he probably hid this in September, October. So as soon as the last person left, he had all the time in the world to walk about 60 feet, go across the creek and put the treasure chest there and clean everything up. Then he would go back to his car to get the actual loot, walk across back to the campsite, go back down there, put the gold in there, and then tidy things up and leave. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click like, please subscribe, and please help me pass this video around. I don't go on that many forums, and it doesn't cost you anything to do so. So please, I hope you enjoy. This is the solve, we believe. Although we did not find the chest, we knew this solve, and we knew it back in May. We just didn't get there in time. We were beat by, I believe, 2 days. So the finder does deserve the chest. He found it. We had this information out there since 2016. It was open for the public to use it, and that's what happened. Unfortunate for us. This video here contains drone footage, and I'm going to leave the link to it. You can go and check it out in your own time. And remember, peace.